Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA Karen malicious compliance Reddit stories. In this Ripestories video, imagine an HOA trying to collect 15 years of unpaid dues from a property completely outside their subdivision. They claimed they could foreclose on my brother's workshop, seize the equipment, and ruin everything he built. Here is what happens when a bully picks the wrong person to mess with. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, HOA spending nearly $500,000 in FEMA road repair funds on unlicensed contractor, the work already started. Posted by user Strange Fennel. So in the latest episode of HOA's Gone Wild, our NC HOA got funds post-Helene, which was a hurricane if I remember correctly, for major private road repairs. The board hired a landscaper, not a road contractor, for huge scope, road regrading, ditch work, slide stabilization, culvert rebuilds, gravel resurfacing, and no GC license found despite $40,000+ threshold. The quotes were provided to owners after the work started and confirmed earthwork requiring general contractor classification. No permits were shared, no board meetings, no owner meetings, no open meetings, no owner input, the work already started. The board ignored repeated records requests, so I sent a demand letter today. I was escalating it to the state licensing board/FEMA if no license proof was to be given. Cannot believe that they would risk federal funds like this. And yeah guys, I gotta say, I really applaud OP for escalating this. Because I mean, on the one hand, it could all be a massive misunderstanding or massive case of incompetence, which is very likely. Or the other option is that the contracted company is probably in some way related to someone on the HOA board and someone here is embezzling money. But that is just my guess here. However, good for OP for escalating it to make sure that everything is above board. Comment number 1 said, work that costly must require permits, maybe even multiple permits, go to the town and ask to see them, and if not, report non-permitted work being done. If there are permits, tell them that the contractor does not have a license and ask if it is common to issue permits to non-licensed contractors. If you can get the town on your side, then that will force the HOA to behave. And by the way guys, I gotta say, in the US, that should never be common to issue permits to non-licensed contractors in a case like this. That is something I would expect to hear here maybe in Thailand, but not in the US. Anyway, the Reddit commenter further said, I don't know what HOA laws are in North Carolina, but your CC&Rs probably give you the right to review every receipt and invoice, and you are also entitled to review the board minutes. Ask for the minutes of the meeting where this was decided. Actually, I have not lived in a state where the HOA can decide things in secret, and I've been on the board in 3 of those states. Comment number 2, I can tell you this. The HOA is in direct violation of the agreement for those funds. They have to use a licensed professional, and if they are not, I would let FEMA know. You are on the right path here. Keep everything in writing, and if they try to talk to you, tell them to put it in writing. Also, I would check your state's HOA laws and how they are violating them by not following the protocol for the meetings, transparency, and so on. And now, thankfully, we have an update to the story, and it goes like this. So I previously posted about our FEMA-funded NC HOA's road repair project and concerns that the board was moving ahead without producing records, permits, licensing proof, or notice of board or contractor meetings. I also provided months of advance notice that if they would not answer basic questions about the project, I would have no choice but to involve regulators. Did they think I was just BSing like they do? Well, apparently so. Regulators got involved and made them stop work. The board still has not produced the records I requested. Now the same board is acting as if the problem is me asking for documentation when all I ever asked for was proof that the work was lawful, properly permitted, and properly licensed. For months I asked for engineering plans, contractor licensing, permit determinations, board authorization records, and meeting notices before money was spent. Instead, I got vague replies, shifting explanations, and a demand that I pay the contractor $400 per hour for them to research permit and licensing issues that a qualified contractor should already know. I do not oppose repairing the road, I oppose spending HOA or FEMA-related funds without the records, approvals, and licensed professionals needed to do it correctly. If the board wants less pushback, the solution is simple. Run a normal damn board with things like licensed contractors and permitted projects and Wait for it, board meetings. But nope, they would rather spend owner time obstructing and money resisting. They haven't realized it's futile yet. I suppose neither have I. And yeah guys, props to OP. I guess that unlicensed project is not gonna move forward for now. Also, maybe it's just me, but there must be some kind of rule in the HOA CC&Rs that every single HOA board must have at least one embezzling criminal in the board. Why is there always one person at least seemingly who is skimming funds by not doing the work that he's getting paid for? I would say for now the story is sort of concluded. I mean, the work is not moving forward, but if there are any more updates, I will let you guys know. The next one is titled HOA demands 15 years of backdated fees and dues for land they do not own. Big mistake. Posted on r/maliciouscompliance. So this happened a while back when I was dealing with one of the most stressful transitions of my life. So for context, my older brother had spent his entire adult life building a small but highly respected woodworking workshop. He was a master craftsman who made high-end custom furniture, intricate wood carvings, and beautiful home decor. His workshop was his life, but sadly, he passed away unexpectedly after his illness got the better of him. He did not have a wife or children, so in his will he left the entire business, the workshop and the property it sat on to me. I was absolutely devastated by his loss. We were very close, and the thought of just selling off his life's work to some random developer made me sick to my stomach. I decided right then and there to leave my corporate job and take over the workshop and keep his legacy alive. I had spent plenty of weekends helping him out, so I knew the basics of running the place. Even if I wasn't the master woodworker that he was, I kept his longtime local assistants on the payroll and we got back to work. The workshop itself was located in an interesting spot in the Philippines. It sat on a piece of land that directly bordered a relatively wealthy gated residential subdivision managed by an incredibly corrupt and pushy homeowner association. My brother's land was an independent property though that had been in our family for generations, way before the developers bought up the surrounding agricultural land to build the subdivisions. Because of this, my brother's property was completely separate from the HOA territory. The workshop had its own direct access road leading out to the main provincial highway, entirely bypassing the gated subdivision entrances. For years my brother operated in peace, or so I initially thought. About 2 weeks after I officially took over operations and changed the business registration details over to my name, a man walked into the workshop courtyard. This was the HOA president. I walked out of the office to greet him, assuming he was a customer wanting to commission a high-end dining table or some cabinets, but instead of introducing himself politely, he looked at me and demanded to know if I was the new owner. I told him that I was, explaining that I'd inherited the business from my late brother, and hearing this, the HOA president did not offer any condolences. Instead, his eyes lit up. He told me that since the previous owner had passed away and a new owner was taking over, it was now time to settle the massive outstanding debt on the property, and I was completely confused. I asked him what debt he was talking about. He tapped his clipboard and announced that this workshop was sitting on land that belonged to the subdivision's master plan, making it part of the HOA. He claimed that my brother had refused to pay his monthly HOA maintenance dues, security fees, and environmental fees for the last 15 years. He then told me that the HOA board was ecstatic to finally clear this up, and they were officially demanding that I pay 15 years worth of backdated dues, compounded interest, and non-compliance penalties immediately. I told him that this land had belonged to our family since our grandfather's time and was absolutely not part of his subdivision. I explained that we paid our property taxes directly to the municipal government and we did not use a single service provided by the HOA. The HOA president didn't care at all. He got incredibly aggressive, leaning over my counter and telling me that it didn't matter what I thought. He said that according to their internal map, our property fell within their zone of control. He threatened that if I did not settle the 15 years worth of backdated fees within 30 days, the HOA would initiate legal proceedings to foreclose on the land and seize the workshop equipment, and shut down our operations completely. He told me that I needed to stop resisting and comply with the law if I wanted to keep running my business. He then handed me a printed piece of paper detailing a ridiculous breakdown of charges that totaled hundreds of thousands of Philippine pesos. Oh, and by the way guys, I forgot to mention this story took place in the Philippines. Anyway, after he marched out, I went straight to my brother's old filing cabinets to look through his historical documents, and as I dug deeper into the older folders, my blood began to boil. I found a stack of old letters from this exact same HOA president spanning back over a decade. It turned out that the president had been quietly bullying, harassing and threatening my brother for years. My brother, who was a gentle and non-confrontational artist, had constantly written back explaining the property was independent, even attaching copies of his land title, but the HOA president had just kept sending the threatening letters, trying to wear him down. My brother had kept it all a secret because he did not want to worry the family, choosing instead to ignore the crazy demands and file the letters away. Seeing how much stress this awful man had caused my brother during his life made something snap inside of me. The HOA president wanted me to comply with the law? Fine. I was gonna comply with the actual law of the land so thoroughly and maliciously that it would utterly destroy them. Instead of trying to argue with the president or sending a standard reply, I went straight to a highly reputable local law firm. I hired an attorney who specialized in property disputes and land titles, and I laid out the entire history, showed him the 15-year breakdown of fake fees, and gave him the mountain of harassment letters my brother had preserved. My attorney was absolutely delighted when he saw the documents. He explained that there are very strict laws regarding land registration, and trying to illegally claim jurisdiction over an independent property to extort money, which was a massive violation. Furthermore, the continuous threats of foreclosure without any legal basis constituted severe harassment, extortion, and unjust vexation. My attorney looked at me and said that if we wanted to comply with the law perfectly, we should do it by using the full weight of the legal system to put the HOA in their place. He suggested that instead of just playing defense, we should launch a massive legal counteroffensive. I told him to go ahead and put out all the stops. Our first stop was to gather undeniable official proof. So my attorney went ahead and obtained certified true copies of our original land title, the historical boundaries, and the official government survey maps of the area, and the government documents clearly and beautifully showed that our land was completely separate with its own specific lot number that was entirely excluded from the subdivision's land title block. We also discovered that when the subdivision developers originally bought the surrounding land decades ago, their own submitted master plan explicitly noted our property as an excluded private lot, so the HOA president had literally just fabricated the entire claim out of thin air, likely hoping that since my brother had passed away, the new owner would be scared enough to just pay up. With this ironclad evidence ready, we didn't just mail it to the HOA president. No, instead we structured our response as an official legal compliance action, and my attorney drafted a massive formal response package. It included the certified government title tracks, the official survey maps, and a beautifully detailed lawsuit notification. We filed an official civil suit against the HOA and the president personally for damages, harassment, and attempted extortion, but we didn't stop there. In the Philippines, there are specific legal mechanisms to protect individuals from ongoing systematic harassment. My lawyer successfully petitioned for an official protection order, which essentially functions like a restraining order in other parts of the world. This order legally prohibited the HOA president, the board members, or any of their hired security guards from coming within a specific distance of our property line, my workshop staff, or me personally. If any of them set foot on our access road or inside our courtyard, they would be immediately arrested for violating a court mandate. The day the court notices and the protection order were finalized, I chose not to send them via standard mail. I wanted to make sure everything was witnessed, and an official court server personally would hand the documents to the HOA president during one of their monthly community board meetings, which they had held at the subdivision's open-air clubhouse. I knew from my brother's old notes that these meetings were usually attended by dozens of neighborhood residents who wanted to discuss basic things like trash collection, street lighting, community events, and so on, and the neighborhood members had absolutely no idea that their president was running a rogue extortion racket on the side using the HOA name. The court server marched right into the middle of the crowded meeting, stepped up to the main table where the president was sitting with the rest of the board, and presented him with a massive stack of legal documents. The server loudly announced that he was serving an official court summons for a civil lawsuit regarding land extortion and harassment, alongside an active protection order issued by the regional trial court. The HOA president's face instantly lost all of its color. They tried to brush it off casually in front of his neighbors, stammering that it was just a minor administrative misunderstanding regarding a local vendor, but the court server, following my attorney's strict instructions to ensure full legal disclosure, loudly clarified the situation for the record. He also announced that the president was being sued for illegally demanding 15 years of fake backdated dues from an independent business owner on land the HOA didn't own, and that he was now legally barred by a judge from approaching the property or the owner under penalty of immediate arrest. Several residents stood up right then and there, demanding to know what was going on and asking if the president had been using community funds to pay for legal threats or if he was exposing the entire HOA block to massive financial liability. I was told that the president was so incredibly embarrassed and flustered that he completely lost his composure, abruptly adjourning the meeting, and with the protection order actively in place, the constant harassment stopped instantly. The HOA president didn't dare to come near the workshop again, knowing that my assistants and I had our phones ready to record him, and called the local police the second his foot crossed our boundary line. But the real destruction was happening inside the subdivision itself. The homeowners were absolutely furious that their president had entangled the community association in a serious lawsuit over an illegal land grab. A group of concerned residents formed an internal committee and demanded a full audit of the HOA's financial books and historical correspondence. The audit revealed that the president had been using the association's budget to pay for personal expenses. He had been hiding those costs under general administrative expenses. The neighborhood members realized that the president was an entitled rogue tyrant whose actions were gonna cost the community an immense amount of money in legal defense fees, and they organized an emergency community assembly. With a massive overwhelming majority vote, the homeowners officially stripped the president of his title, voted him entirely off the board, and kicked out the remaining board members who had blindly supported him. The newly appointed HOA board immediately sent an official apologetic letter to my attorney. They explicitly stated for the record that the HOA completely recognized our property as independent, withdrew any and all claims to fees or dues, and formally condemned the actions of the former president. They literally begged us to settle the civil lawsuit out of court to prevent the association from going completely bankrupt. And since my primary goal was to protect my brother's legacy and secure the workshop's future, I agreed to an out-of-court settlement. The former president, however, was left completely ruined. The new board refused to cover a single cent of his personal legal expenses, forcing him to pay for his own lawyers out of pocket. Furthermore, his reputation in the community was completely destroyed. His neighbors completely shunned him, and he could no longer show his face at any community events, and he eventually had to put his own house up for sale and move out of the area in absolute shame. Today, the workshop is thriving. We have full legal recognition, an ironclad boundary line that no one dares to question anymore, and a fantastic relationship with the new reasonable HOA board members. And now for my opinion about this story. So I would say the fact that this guy was also embezzling community funds shows exactly what kind of a monster he really was. I mean, you did not just protect your workshop here, you actually saved that entire subdivision from a parasite who was actively stealing their money. But then again, imagine losing your house, your neighborhood reputation, and your life savings because you could not resist the urge to bully a guy who makes some nice chairs. I would say the HOA president got exactly what they deserved. And now actually an interesting comment from Reddit which said, my uncle dealt with something kind of similar in Texas, where a homeowner association tried to claim that his ranch property was part of their jurisdiction, even though his family had owned the land since the 1940s, which was decades before the suburb was even built. The difference was, though, that my uncle just ignored them and they eventually gave up after about 2 years. Reading this story makes me wonder if this HOA was just testing the waters and would have kept escalating if he had shown any weakness. It is wild how these HOA presidents get drunk on the tiniest amount of power. And yeah, guys, I think I would agree with that sometimes it is better to wait, but we have also read a lot of stories where waiting can result in some really negative consequences. So I would say it's better to be proactive and go to the police or maybe sue an HOA instead of waiting for something worse to happen. Let me know what you think in the comments. And the next one is another comment from Reddit. This one said, obviously the HOA president sucks for the decade-plus harassment campaign and trying to extort you for fake fees on land he knew damn well was not part of the subdivision. That is indefensible and frankly borderline criminal. I would say that is criminal, not just borderline, but anyway. However, you took this too far. A simple certified letter from a lawyer with the land title would have ended this in a week, but instead you filed a massive lawsuit. That is not complying with the law, that just goes way too far. The letters your brother specifically chose not to escalate, by the way. There is defending your property, and then there's revenge, and you crossed that line. And yeah, guys, I'm not sure if I would agree with that Reddit comment. Either way, if you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel because I post daily videos. And the next one is another super interesting HOA story that is titled, I have been living in a homeowner association that has been dissolved for over a decade. And this one was posted by user Matt76Allen. So, for more than 8 years, my family lived under the authority of an HOA in Michigan that I never once thought to question. It was a small neighborhood with no pool, no clubhouse, no gates, no HOA dues, and the whole thing mostly just existed to enforce neighborhood rules and supposedly protect property values. And honestly, for years it seemed mostly fine. The original landowner's son lived in the neighborhood and acted as the HOA president. As far as anyone knew, he had always been the guy in charge and nobody really questioned it, including me. And then last fall, my wife and I decided to pour a cement expansion next to our garage for additional parking. We went through what we thought was the normal approval process. Conversations happened, texts were exchanged, and everything seemed normal. Then, the night before the cement trucks were scheduled to arrive, I got a text saying that part of the project was suddenly not approved, and if we moved forward anyway, we could end up having to tear it all out. So I asked what I thought was a pretty simple question: what rule are we breaking? The response I got back was basically, "It is not approved, Matt, bottom line." That was it. No bylaw reference, no township ordinance, no actual written rule saying that we couldn't park next to our garage. Just authority. Something about that really bothered me, to be honest. Not enough to start a fight or something, but enough to make me start digging. At first I thought I find some technical thing or something, maybe a misunderstanding, but instead I ended up going down a rabbit hole involving HOA bylaws, non-profit filings, township ordinances, and Michigan corporate records, and that is when things got really interesting. So I found out that our HOA listed on the Michigan Business Registry as a non-profit corporation with the status dissolved, operation of law, and the annual filings had apparently stopped in 2012, and I was doing this research in 2025. And yeah, at first I assumed it had to be a misunderstanding or something, so I kept trying to disprove it. I searched every variation of the HOA name I could think of, looked for alternate entities, dug through county records, kept looking for anything that explained why a dissolved corporation was still acting like an active HOA, and I kept ending up at the same result. I immediately realized that our house was not even built until years after the HOA had already been dissolved. And yet, the HOA was still approving project, enforcing rules, denying requests, and acting as if everything was still fully active. That is when I stopped focusing on the cement situation and started focusing on how to tell the rest of the neighborhood what I found. I did not want screaming matches or neighborhood drama, I just wanted everyone to have the same information, so I wrote a 5-page letter explaining everything as clearly and calmly as I could. I included screenshots from the Michigan State website showing the dissolved status, along with instructions showing neighbors how to verify it themselves. Then I did something that still makes me laugh a little bit. I checked to see if the exact HOA name was available as a com domain, and it was. So I bought it, then I built a website, and the homepage contained the same letter I mailed to everyone in the neighborhood. I also added an FAQ section and a password-protected discussion page where homeowners could talk privately. There are only 10 homes in our neighborhood, so I hand-addressed 9 envelopes, drove to the post office, and mailed the letters out. A few days later, things got interesting. The HOA president was obviously upset and eventually joined the private discussion page, trying to defend the situation, but the more he defended it, the worse it actually got. At one point, he openly admitted that he had intentionally allowed the HOA to expire years earlier to save money, so now homeowners were reading in writing that the HOA had knowingly been dissolved for years while still continuing to operate like it had authority. After that, things quieted down pretty fast. No lawsuits, no neighborhood war, no dramatic confrontation. Honestly, life just kind of went back to normal. This all happened last October, and today the HOA still has not been reinstated. Nobody enforces anything anymore, nobody sends approval texts, nobody talks about HOA violations and the cement parking area that supposedly couldn't be used. Well, we park there all the time now, nobody says a word, and that, my friends, is my HOA story, or rather, the short version. And yeah guys, it seemed like this HOA was basically just one random guy who sits in his house and decides what other people are and are not allowed to do with the houses they own. I feel like there should have been some consequences for this douchebag, but then again, good on OP for solving the situation like this. A user in the comments wrote something very interesting which said, "Be very careful here, the Michigan Court of Appeals has applied MCL 5 something number to uphold the authority of a HOA retroactively during the period of dissolution." For example, in Hawthorne Ridge Homeowner Association versus Yan Wang, unpublished per curiam opinion of the Michigan Court of Appeals, the court held that a homeowner association reinstatement under MCL number blah 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 restored its legal authority as though dissolution had never occurred, validating enforcement actions taken during the dissolution period. And yeah guys, if that is true, that is absolutely outrageous. That sounds like the Umbrella Corporation resurrecting dead HOAs. A literal HOA zombie virus, if you will. And the next one is a funny story from r/petty revenge, which is titled, "I made sure her toe is stubbed every single time." So I grew up sharing a room with my sister, but eventually I stopped having a room at all. She was unbelievably messy, the only visible carpet was a narrow path between her bed, dresser and the door. She would also borrow the car we shared without any warning, steal my money and then stay up late constantly. She would also make the room absolutely miserable to be in. Eventually I only went in there to change clothes. So most nights I ended up sleeping in the basement, waiting for my dad to finish his nightly TV routine so I could finally get some peace and quiet. I literally cried out of frustration more than once, so when my sister finally moved out, I was thrilled. The room became mine, and it was the biggest bedroom in the house. I cleaned it top to bottom until there wasn't a trace of her left, even though she had abandoned tons of junk behind. Fast forward 2 years, she moves back in. Everyone in the family was quietly wondering if I'd given the bedroom back, but absolutely not. She got the smaller room down the hall instead, along with the cat she brought home that now wakes everyone up at night while she is out enjoying her nightlife. The petty revenge part? Well, she still comes into my room because I have the best mirrors in the house, so I've started accidentally leaving random things in the hallway outside my room. Nothing harmful really, just enough to make her mutter under her breath when she bumps into them during her trips to my mirrors. And well guys, if you want to be extra petty, you should put some Legos out there, because we all know stepping on Legos is probably one of the worst feelings in the world. Thank you so much for watching, please don't forget to check out my playlist on the left, and I will see you again tomorrow.